Welcome back to another episode of Tired Old Queen at the Movies. If you love Steve as much as I do, you can buy some Steve merch below. Let's go see him.
Welcome, John. Won't you come in? Take off your shoes. Take off your socks. Take off your... Won't you come in? Ooh, Johnny. We haven't done a Joan Crawford movie since the last Joan Crawford movie we did. So I decided to go with 1950s Harriet Craig, directed by Vincent Sherman and starring Joan Crawford, Wendall Corey, Ellen Corby, K.T. Stevens, Viola Roche. Now, this is based on a Pulitzer Prize winning play by George Kelly called Craig's Wife. George Kelly was Grace Kelly's uncle. And it ran on Broadway for a long, long time. And it was filmed in 1936 by director Dorothy Arzner with Rosalind Russell, of all people. She did a really good job. Basically, the plot is this. Harriet is a completely narcissistic woman.
I don't like the feeling of being rushed along in the darkness, having no control.
She values the possessions in her house more than anything else, especially her husband's and anyone who tries to get close to her.
How's my beautiful wife?
Weary.
So she manipulates everything. It's really kind of the diary of a massive control freak. This woman is just through the roof controlling.
Did you find out about the reservations?
They could only give us a compartment.
But I told you I wanted
the best they could do on such short notice, Harriet.
Oh, I suppose I should have called myself.
Joan was having a great year. 1950, she did The Damn Don't Cry, which Vincent Sherman directed. And then she also did a comedy, a pseudo-comedy dramedy called Goodbye My Fancy at Warner Brothers. So she had 3 movies out that year. And this one really, I think, gave her one of the great roles in her mid-career.
These last few days, I want to be with you as much as possible.
Well, I want to be with you, too.
Do you? You're sweet.
Sheila O'Brien, she had discovered this new designer who gave her those 50s full skirts, and she is cold as a polar bear's foot in this movie. She is just wicked.
But don't come crawling back to me when you find out you can't take care of yourself alone.
She rules her husband by sex. She always is getting him into bed and convincing him that, you do this for me and I'll do this for you.
I think I'll go upstairs and take a nice warm bath and lie down for a while.
The house has to be spotless at all time. The moment that the husband leaves the house, she's a monster to all the servants. She makes them cry. She ridicules them. She berates them.
Now look what you've done.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Craig.
Being sorry won't mend the cup.
She has her young cousin, K.T. Stevens, living with her, Claire, who she calls, Claire.
Claire, get your coat and hat.
But, Harriet, I haven't packed my things yet.
Well, why haven't you? Do hurry.
Well,
And she always orders her around like a servant. This poor girl has, yes, Harriet.
You can see how it's been all morning. I've just had everything to do.
Claire, why can't I depend on you? I thought I could depend on you. When you first moved in, I thought you'd be nice to be here. But you aren't, Claire. It's hard. She's just such a bitch. And it's pure, wonderful Crawford.
But bring it upstairs, will you? This has been such a tiring day. I've had to do everything for the party myself.
This movie offered her a transition. Warner Brothers was running out of things to do with her. And after The Damn Don't Cry, it was getting harder and harder to find things. She was getting older. Betty Davis once said about Crawford, she said, I was lucky because I was never known as a great beauty. And Joan was. And it was much harder to get older for Joan than it was for me, because I never was regarded as a great beauty. Oh, I look back at my pictures now and I thought I was gorgeous. But at the time, I did not, and I was told I was not attractive. But Joan was always known for her beauty, and it was much harder for those women to get older in our business. And I think it was true. I agree with her. It was true. The reason I like this movie is that it's kind of like I try not to mention too much the Mommie Dearest stuff because, I'm not interested so much in that. I'm interested in the movies and I'm interested in Joan. But this was a lot like she was. She was a cleaning fanatic. Her house had to be spotless. All of the furniture was covered in plastic.
Walter, don't sit on the arm. It isn't very strong. And do be careful of the vase, won't you, dear?
You could barely breathe. It wasn't a lived-in environment. And that's how this house is. It's got sets designed by her friend Billy Haynes. He had a book called Wisecracker that was put out about him by William J. Mann. This is really, really good about how he was one of the great stars of silent era films. And he gave Joan her early breaks. And then he was accused of being homosexual and was called into MGM's office, and Louis Mayer said, okay, you either give up your husband, Jimmy Shields at the time, or else, you're done. And William Haynes essentially said, the hell with you. This is the man I love, and I'm going to stay with him. I don't care about this. I'll leave. So Joan Crawford and Carol Lombard got him started in interior design, and he became one of the biggest and most famous interior designers for the next 40 years in Hollywood. So she had him come in and do the sets for Harriet Craig. So it's really stylish,
What an exquisite vase.
Yes, isn't it?
Thank you. It's early Ming Dynasty.
Wendall Corey was a really good actor, much better than he was given credit for. He wasn't just somebody who sat on the side. We saw him stand up to Barbara Stanwyck in The Furies. We saw him as James Stewart's buddy in Rear Window, the cop who kind of says, don't believe everything you see across there. He was kind of a practical guy. In this one, he's just kind of an affable, nice guy. Everybody likes him, and she sabotages him. She just, she finds out he's out for a promotion and he may be gone a lot. And she doesn't want him gone a lot. She wants to know where he is. So she goes into his boss and she says to him, he has a history. I wish I didn't have to say this, but, he's unreliable in many ways.
Walter picked up with some gambling acquaintances, and that he'd lost almost all of his mother's estate.
And, the boss starts to think badly of him, and he's been doing a really good job. He has his boss and the boss's wife come over for dinner. The wife is played by Lucille Watson, who played Norma Shearer's mother in The Women. Wendell Corey gets along very well with his boss's wife, and they come in for dinner and they play cards. And Harriet keeps trying to interrupt. Would you like a cigarette? Would you like some? Oh, no, we're fine. We're just fine.
You killed me.
The wise old bird, a little owl-like. And when she gets her husband into the taxi that night, she says, why haven't you given Craig a higher responsibility at the office? Well, I don't know. I don't. I think he deserves to go up. He deserves to move up, and I think you ought to take a note of him. Well, all right, dear, if you say so. I do say so. Mm-hmm. What do you think of Mrs. Craig?
Harriet Craig is a very good-looking woman.
That's all she has to say. And that she has this woman nailed, that it's the whole sex thing. As much as they could do in the 50s, they couldn't get really obvious about it. But, she'll wake him up from naps and things, and he'll want to, get a, no, I can't. I've got to get my hand. No.
We'll be right there. Darling, we have to eat.
Then she goes and visits her mother, and you get an insight on her character. She takes Claire on the train and goes and visits her mother, who's got dementia. And she brings her mother a pin, and her mother goes, what is it for? What is it? She doesn't really recognize her, and that just crushes her because she's afraid. I think she's afraid that she's going to end up like her mother, So she's holding these possessions. It's sort of a wonderful statement on, holding on to possessions is a false form of security, And gradually, people read into her and see her for what she is. Gradually, they don't have any friends anymore. Nobody's calling them anymore. Their servants are quitting like crazy. And why? And he is kind of oblivious. And then finally, he just has had enough. And he finds out that she's been undermining him with the boss. And all hell breaks loose. She does this whole monologue about how false men are, and that it's all false promises, and they only want one thing. And if you're going to get along in the world, then you better know how to manipulate them and have them under your finger, because it's the only thing you've got to work with. And it's just brutal.
No woman dares to be honest. She has to think of herself. Who else is going to protect her?
Does she need protection from the man who loves her?
You bet she does.
Turns out Joan wrote that monologue herself. So that's pretty telling for the time. It's slick. It's Crawford at her best. She's regal. She's bitchy. She's just fabulous.
You see, no man's born ready for marriage. He has to be trained.
And then she gets her comeuppance, and you're kind of glad. And Joan wasn't afraid to play characters who got their comeuppance, which is kind of great, in her character. And you can't take your eyes off her. She's absolutely commands the screen. She had such star quality that no matter what happened, Crawford walks on and boom, you are riveted. And you're going to be riveted with Joan Crawford, Wendall Corey, Ellen Corby, Lucille Watson, and K.T. Stevens in Harriet Craig.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves
delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat.